Hello, everyone, and welcome to Educator Night. I'm Judith Huerta from Penguin Young Readers, and I am so happy you're all joining us for tonight's panel, In Your Hands, Youth Activism in Kidlit. Before I hand it over to our speakers for tonight, I just wanted to take a second and talk about the reason why this discussion came together, which is banned and challenged books. Book bans are rising at a rapid rate in school districts across America, driven by new laws and regulations limiting the kinds of books children can access. At Penguin Random House, we stand with teachers and librarians and trust their expertise on what books to share with young readers in their classrooms and libraries. And we stand by our readers because everybody deserves to see themselves in a book. The Penguin Young Readers SNL team created a Rally for the Right to Read page featuring a justification database that has reviews, awards, and educator resources for PYR frequently challenged titles. You can also request a Rally for the Right to Read kit for your community that includes postcards to write representatives, customizable signage, and a one sheet with info and resources. The festival team will share a link in the chat, but just to read this out real quick, it's sites.prh.com/write-to-read. And if you're looking for more resources from us, please check out the tote bag item, which links to our Latinx Voices book list, and watch the Penguin Young Readers team book talk some of our favorite books by Latinx creators. Both links are also going to be shared in the chat. For more resources, you can visit us at penguinclassroom.com. We're constantly updating the site with materials for you to use. You can also always reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you all for tuning in, and a special thank you to the festival team for all the work that they do. Now over to Carmen and Becky.
Welcome to the
Hi.
2023. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I would like to introduce to our audience our wonderful moderator, and that is Becky Calzada. She is the district library coordinator in Leander, Texas, and she's also a co-founding member of the Texas FReadom Fighters, and freedom as in read. She's the 2425 American Association of School Librarians president-elect. She was selected for the 4th ALA Policy Core cohort and works as a member of the ALA Policy Core Proactive Advocacy on Book Banning cadre. She's the recipient of several Intellectual Freedom Awards and was honored by People magazine in their 2023 Women Changing the World portfolio. So I feel very, very honored to be here together with Becky Calzada.
Thank you, Carmen. And let me introduce you. So, State Poet Laureate of Texas from 2015 to 2016, and San Antonio's First City Poet Laureate from 2012 to 2014. Dr. Carmen Tarfolla is the author of children's books, poetry, short stories, screenplays, and nonfiction. A native of San Antonio, her work has been translated and published in English, Spanish, French, German, and Bengali. Tarfolla has received numerous recognitions, including the acclaimed Americas Award, 2 Tomas Rivera Book Awards, and Charlotte Zolotow, 6 International Latino Book Awards, and the Fred Rogers Corporation's Best Books for Babies. And in her latest book, which we'll talk about today, Warrior Girl, which Kirkus Reviews calls an exuberant, rousing celebration of youth activism, is her 40th book, and it published on September 5th of this year. So before we launch into our chat, I wanted to kind of remind our attendees about some things. And so I want everybody to make some time to read the anti-harassment policy that's going to be posted in the chat box. And also remind everybody that's here tonight to subscribe to the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival's YouTube channel. It is Educator Night, and so we want educators to know that there is going to be lots of programming that'll be on that YouTube channel. And so we also encourage everybody to enter to win a free virtual visit from a Latinx author, or an illustrator. So find the link, sign up, and so you can win a prize and have an author come visit you. So anyway, so I'm so excited to be here with you today, Carmen. Not many people know this, but I actually had the opportunity to hear you in person last week. as you shared your book, and it was such a wonderful event. And so it just really got me even that much more excited about your book, Warrior Girl. So let's start first by you sharing a bit about it. Can you give us a little short summary so everybody can better understand what your book is about?
Well, let me set the stage a little bit. When people ask, what's the book really about? This book's about reclaiming what's yours, what's really yours, reclaiming those lost parts of yourself whose absence still hurts, reclaiming them in a way that reminds you that there is joy and celebration and a spirit in your core that can never be lost or taken away. Um, this book's also about learning to build a shield that's very special. It lets some things through, like smiles and friendship and new hopes or dreams and new adventures, but other things like dirty looks or sneers or lies or insults, those things just bounce right off. Um, and the book's about stress, and it's about strategies for how to deal with big problems in ways that actually affect change. When all that's said, it's about a 12-year-old girl who's been through some really tough stuff as a little kid, moving from small racist town to small racist town, where her name would get changed and her language would get jumped on because it was not the language that was supposed to be spoken. It was Spanish, and it was looked down on, as it is in a lot of educational settings, unenlightened educational settings. But her history was written out of the textbooks. She was corrected out of almost everything, including how to pronounce her own name. So this child has gone through that, and she's kind of come to the conclusion that I just have to keep quiet at school because when I speak up, I get in trouble.
Yeah.
And then a few good things happen. Not only the wonderful support she gets at home from her dad, who's undocumented and goes from town to town. That's why they move so much, looking for jobs that can help support the family. But also from her mom and from her grandma, who is just a pillar of wisdom and strength and calm, and who just keeps telling her to keep on keeping on. Um, Finally, when she turns 12, the family decides to move to San Antonio, big city with a lot of multicultural education, and uh, they're going to move in and live with grandma. So this is a delightful, turn of events for her. She's looking forward to her new school. Things just couldn't be better. She's going to have electives. She's going to decide how she's going to be called and what she wants to call herself. And suddenly, the night before she starts 7th grade, her father is deported back to Mexico again, like he was when she was a small child. Um, they don't hear from him. They're not sure where he is. They're not sure what's going on. And it's at the very same time, the 2019 to 2020 year, when there are cages being set up at the border on the U.S. side to lock up people who are not documented. So the worry in that year is tremendous. And all of this worry and all of this ugly stuff that has happened just makes her stronger and more committed to justice.
Yeah.
So she becomes a little activist for social justice. Now, you might think that's a lot to place on a 12-year-old kid, but I think it's very realistic. There's a lot of kids like this out there who are still determined to laugh and smile and be themselves and find the good in the world. And those of us who are familiar with Mexican American history in the Southwest won't be surprised to see the situation of a child whose name gets changed, whose language gets forbidden, whose history gets erased. This is that history, and I'm going to share with you just a few photographs that I brought to help people understand the context we're looking at. Now, her grandma, the one who's so strong for her, grew up in the 1950s and 60s, and was part of the Chicano movement, which is one reason why she's got all these things she's thought about and she's able to help counsel her on. In this first picture, you see my second grade classroom. And there were a ton of us. This was after a third of the kids went off to the migrant stream. So the 35 or so of us that were left in this photo don't represent what happened on the first day of school when 80 or 90% of the kids didn't speak English and the teacher never spoke Spanish, and Spanish was against the law. Speaking Spanish in school was against the law. So, but still, we're young enough to where you see an awful lot of smiles on here. This is what a lot of classrooms look like in first and second grade in the 1960s. But the next photo you see is what we looked like in high school. And there's no smiles going on. This is the looks of anger, resentment, of having identity stolen, of having names changed on you, having to go by names that aren't the names you're called at home. And then by 1968 or 69, the next photo, this one, is what was going on in the high schools with the kids organizing walkouts, that if you look carefully, you'll see that it's not just kids, it's kids up at the front, but there's also some parents and some store owners and a few local politicians that joined them in the walkouts. And this is one that happened in San Antonio in the Edgewood district. So I thought that would add a little bit of context. And one more photo from that time period. Everybody was always looking over their shoulder to make sure no one was seeing them or hearing them speak Spanish. That's why I like this picture so much, because the girls are obviously like, is it the teacher? Oh no, it's not. It's okay. We're all right. We can converse with each other naturally. So when as I presented to groups and did readings of poetry and short stories and, tried to present to a lot of times the educators or librarians or social workers throughout the Southwest, in fact, throughout the nation, and then throughout Europe and the Americas as well. I tried to present voices from my neighborhood, from my barrio, and my culture. The viejitas, the viejitos, the kids about to drop out of school, but I also wanted to present a first grader. And all of my other characters were dramatized from characters that showed up in my poems and stories, except for the first grader. I knew she needed to be in there. So I created a character just for the stage. She was born on stage and her name was Tere. And for many years I performed Tere. We can go to the next shot. There's one more shot. That one is, that's okay. We can go back. Sorry, I skipped one. This is 1975 in the same neighborhood that you've been seeing the other photos in. This is actually part of our rebellion. Our attempt to reclaim our language was Chicano writers began to say, we're writing literature, the literature that's in our hearts, the stories and the poems. And so this is me and two of my co-authors on my first book, Get Your Tortillas Together. And this is our West Side neighborhood that we were, writing in. So now you go to the next shot and you will see Tere as I perform her, very simple props, but basically the voice of a very young girl, so excited to start first grade, so excited to learn new things and be loved by the teacher. And she discovers that the teacher doesn't like the way her name is pronounced, and she corrects her as if she doesn't know how to pronounce it correctly. She gives her an anglicized version of it. She is criticized when she speaks Spanish, even if it slips up in a natural context. And at the end of the day, she's pretty disappointed in her first grade experience. And so this is me performing it. But in the next picture, you see we incorporated an actual first grader into it, and she came up on stage. This character Tere is the inspiration. for Warrior Girl. Warrior Girl is Tere, grown up to 12, and she remembers being in first grade, and she talks about what happens during first grade, but she's moved on. And one of the rewards for me at the premiere was that there was a little girl in the audience watching this, watching me perform, hearing the story. The book is aimed at 10 and up, and this little girl was 6 and in first grade. But when she saw this, at the end of the program, she turned to her mom and she said, "Mom, I could do that.
She connected
Books, and I could act them out on stage." And in the last picture, you see her in her car seat with her copy of Warrior Girl. And that was totally unexpected for me. First of all, that a 6-year-old would get it all. And then that she would decide that she could be a writer and a performer of the work too. So that was one of the things that made me believe that Warrior Girl hits a much broader audience than just the 10 to 15.
Well, and you never know what a reader's going to connect with, and she connected, and then she hasn't even read the book yet, so that connection is going to go even deeper. So it was an amazing performance, and I can completely see, so many more kids, getting this book and connecting too. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned about her first day of school, which I really appreciated, just her excitement. All kids get excited about school and getting their outfit ready and wanting to look just so. And so she goes to school, and readers get introduced to Selena and hear how her parents thoughtfully learned about her name, how they carefully picked it out. But then it's followed by the first of many microaggressions where the teacher mispronounces Deda's name and then forcefully persists in changing it to an English name. So tell us, you shared a little bit about that exchange. Tell us more and why you chose to launch that in the book.
Well, I think it's realistic and it's empowering to children to know that their names are special, that parents have spent time, lots of time, thinking about it and struggling and trying to find just the perfect embodiment of all their dreams for this child. And then for a society or for an institution to so quickly discard that name and replace it is a very, very scary thing. First of all, we have to recognize that our institutions have been not only very Eurocentric and very Anglocentric, but they have emphasized a message that that speaking English is more important than speaking any other language in the world. And my late husband used to work a lot in gifted education, and he kept having to tell the schools, your children that are gifted don't necessarily speak English. You don't have to speak English to be smart.
Yeah.
And that's the image that has snuck into our extremely monolingual mandate in this nation. So the assertion of an inherent Anglocentric superiority has been one of those, I can't quite name it, frustrations that Latinx kids have had to deal with over the centuries now. It's a force that teachers can often apply without even realizing they're doing it. It's almost with a missionary zeal that they try to civilize us by teaching us what's right, what's preferred, what's sophisticated, what's morally superior, when all they're really teaching us is their own Anglocentrism.
Right.
So many kids that I went to school with, and to this day that are attending schools, get their names changed from Jesus to Jesse, from Rafael to Ralph, from Graciela to Gracie, from Nguyen to Neil, Esperanza to Hope, and even hospitals and other institutions are often negligent in recording names the way they were given. It's like they don't double check, or they don't.
Yeah.
They assume that the way they would do it is the way everyone would do it. So a name is so very symbolic, and it expresses an identity, it expresses a family, a culture, a history. And when we erase or replace that name, we're in essence erasing that person's culture or history or family. So I felt it was really crucial that from the start, readers understand how I got my name, how the parents thought so carefully, and they were even able to adapt to the changes that came along with a very positive spirit that still allowed her the self-respect they wanted her to have.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I know especially over the last several years, there's been more of a push on educators to be sure that we honor children's names, and what they mean, what they represent, and I think it just affirms that understanding. Because I agree, I was raised in a time when my mother said, "Don't speak Spanish because." I don't want you to be put in a bilingual class. And of course, that was years ago, but that was the thing because back then that wasn't a positive thing, unfortunately. And it's interesting how the pendulum swings because now families want their kids to be fluent in many languages, which is great. But like you said, it kind of squashes who you are. And I mean, I had to learn it anyway because I had a grandmother who only spoke Spanish, and she took care of me. So it's just an interesting play. But I think I love the example that it is for others in the book. So as you shared earlier, that in the book, we know that life is filled with joys and struggles, and of course, Selena's life includes lots of struggles, fears, worries, including her dad being deported. Her grandmother gets sick. And then there's a part where she loses a teacher to COVID. And we're living in a time right now where some people push back about a book being too sad or it's just too intense for readers. So what kind of advice would you give educators if someone brought up these kinds of concerns about your book? What can Selena teach us? Teach us and readers.
Well, I think first of all, Selena can teach us to be stubbornly joyful. Mm-hmm. She is going to find a way to do that celebrating that her grandma always tells her about. She's going to find a way to proactively find joy in life and proactively survive the tough stuff. So she doesn't really focus on the tough stuff. She focuses on how do you survive it. And I think it's a disservice to our children to lie to them and to tell them that nothing bad will ever happen to you in life, because that's not a description of life. I think the biggest example of this is the way Mexican American culture treats the Day of the Dead and treats the concept of death. For many, many years, Anglo-American culture really wouldn't even mention death to children. And many children suffered for years because nobody would talk to them about the person that just disappeared from their life suddenly, whether it was a grandparent or whether it was a teacher. The children just didn't know that just one day that person went away, and it caused them much more fear than it did for Mexican American children who were given a way to hold on to the people and that had passed away, and to still have them in their life, and to realize that dead people aren't scary. They love you. If they love you, they love you. They're not going to come back and haunt you.
Right.
So I think that Selena becomes Selena Teresa Guerrera Amaya, our little protagonist, becomes an epitome of her name. Her dad's last name is Guerrero. Her mom's last name is Amaya. And in good Mexican tradition, the child gets both last names. And the nurse doesn't know what to do with 4 names. She thinks that's way too much. So when she's writing down on the birth certificate, she forgets the mom's name entirely and accidentally writes down the dad's name Guerrero with an A at the end instead of an O. And it becomes Guerrera, which is a woman warrior. And her parents think that's so cute. And dad says, "Oh, she's probably going to fight for justice and all these wonderful things. We can get it changed later, maybe." And mom says, "Maybe." And then life happens and things happen and they, don't end up getting it changed. So she is a guerrera. And I think it teaches us strength, all of us, adults and children. So I think what better a way to prepare a child for life than to give them skills with which to deal with unpleasant things. People aren't always going to be nice to you. Not everybody's going to smile at you. Some people are going to call you dirty names, and you need to know how to let it bounce. So that's that I think is the approach that I took in allowing Selena Teresa to claim her power and to claim her maturity and to show us that a 12-year-old can ask some very powerful questions and come up with some very powerful ideas and answers. So I'm not apologetic about. There is one death that occurs in the book. That's my spoiler alert, and it's not gruesome, and we don't see it happen. She hears about it happening, and it bothers her to know and to not know what to do about it. And so she turns back to the traditions that her grandma has taught her about in order to give an honor and a tribute to this person that was significant in her life.
I think too, as hard as some things in life can be, what's wonderful is that books open the opportunity to have that conversation about events, to help process and to understand, but through the eyes of a character, so that maybe somewhere down the line when something happens, they have something to reference, through the character, this very rich character, because she is, like you said, just so resilient and so persistent and just powerful. And I think about these things because, she's a young character. And it's like you said, I think any child, any reader has it in them. It's, are we listening? Are we encouraging that agency within them to advocate, to ask questions, to learn more, to become better? Sometimes we don't do that. And, I'm, as we have children, like, parenting doesn't come with a handbook, right? So we learn the best we can. But what I love is that her family is continually nurturing her and helping to build that resilience in her. So sorry, my alarm clock went off. So let's talk a little bit about the culture. There are lots, because I skipped a question, and so I'm so sorry. There are lots of rich cultural references sprinkled throughout the book, which I love and connected with. I grew up in South Texas, and so I was read about the food and hear about this thing, and I'm like, oh, I know about these things. So, of course, the food, the familia, I love the different consejos that, abuela gave. Was it challenging for you to pick for this story? How did you decide what to share? And do you have a favorite consejo in the book?
Yes, and yes. I think I got all of them. It started out as I knew she was going to be a warrior for celebration. I knew that she was going to be somebody who was determined to create her own celebrations. She's basically decolonizing herself and saying, do I have to celebrate the birthday of that person? Can't I pick my own characters? Can't I celebrate Emma Taneyuka's birthday? And so she does. And so I knew there were going to be celebrations throughout the book. And it was sometimes, I had to cut a lot of celebrations because, otherwise there would be no room for anything else in the book.
I believe that.
Yet the ones that taught something that was integral to the specific struggles she was dealing with, the specific issues that she had to deal with. I think sometimes adults forget that the biggest benefit of reading books, a variety of books, a diversity of literature, isn't just that you get better reading skills, and it isn't just that you're entertained and you're not bored for this weekend. The biggest benefit is that sometimes children and adults feel very alone. I'm the only one who's going through this. No, none of my friends are going through this. And when they see something happen in a book, it gives them that wealth of experiences, even though they're vicarious literary experiences. When you're reading, you are inhabiting that space.
Yeah.
And so you're getting a little bit of experience at something, and you're saying, you mean I'm not the only crazy one who's ever felt that? So it is psychologically a tremendous benefit to children to have someone else who's been through something tough like they have. And I think that cultures that have been through generations of oppression, peoples of color, peoples from specific religious groups or economic levels, often they have they build in survival instructions into their folk sayings, into their recipes, into the way they dance, the underlying messages. So even food has a message, even music has a special message. So in this, grandma keeps trying to make her strong. She knows, she listens to the news. This is a contemporary novel. Things are going on and things are being said on national TV by very, very visible people in high podiums about us directly. And she knows this child is going to hear these nasty things being said about her entire ethnic group. How do you make her strong? So grandma takes every opportunity she can to explain, how tamales have been made on this continent for 12,000 years and how they're wrapped with a little gift wrap bow. And so she gives her the sense of excitement and this sense of enthusiasm about how civilization building this food item is, because it requires a collaboration of many different skills. But I think my favorite one of grandma's dichos or folk sayings or consejos is when she realizes that she doesn't have money to buy what some of the other kids are buying, even when it comes to something as simple as a glossy, big red Valentine. And sometimes she walks past those store windows with the gorgeous big Valentines, and she's so excited about the wonderful new 3 friends she's made in this school that she wants to buy each one of them a giant red glossy Valentine. And she doesn't have the money for it, but she remembers that grandma always said, solo lo barato se compra con dinero. And she said, okay, only cheap things can be bought with money. If a big glossy red Valentine is cheap, what kind of heart is expensive? And she realizes it's the hearts that my friends have. People who sit by me in the cafeteria, who listen to my problems, who nod their head, put their arm around me, help me out when I'm feeling down. And she realized that's the valuable. That's the much more valuable.
Where the treasure is.
That's where the treasure is. It's not, money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy the most valuable thing.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
So that's, I think, my favorite grandmas.
Yeah. Love it. So you mentioned Emma Yuka. Sorry. So she learns in school a lot about different historic leaders, including her, Cesar Chavez, and others. And she tells her friends and teachers about them. And at that same time, she also learns that her grandmother was also an activist and references them all as warriors. What I love is Selena's writing is the tool that empowers her to set things straight about history, her identity, and also to process her feelings, because she does a lot of that. So did you know from the beginning that writing was going to be the tool and the vehicle for her student agency?
No, not at all. I mean, I had to follow her to see what would happen. And that's kind of my approach, my strategy when I'm writing a character. If I get very deeply into the character, I feel I need to know them. So I need to ask them questions and they need to tell me what they believe. And I need to follow where they go. I kind of know where I want it to go, but I'm often surprised in the writing. So this book was written pretty much it's in its entirety in April of 2019, no, 2020. The pandemic had just started.
Wow.
We were watching, we're in the middle of the country, so we were watching as the shutdowns started getting more severe from the East Coast moving west. And we knew it was going to hit us. And by early April, by the first week of April, everything was shut down. And the schools get shut down. And all of my speaking engagements in other states were shut down. And
oh, I remember.
Here I am sitting at the desk with a whole month on my hands. I can't go do the presentation I was going to do, but I can write. And I pick up a pen to try and finish the overdue biography of Emma Thaniyuga, which we've been researching, her niece and I have been researching on for many years. And I work on it some, but suddenly this voice comes out of left field and just hits me, and I start to write her down. And it's Selena Teresa. It's our little 12-year-old. And I followed her. I know the ending kind of, and I know the beginning, but I don't always know what path they're going to take to get where they're going. Making her a writer is easy to me because it's how I solve problems. You know, and I'm really worried about something, I might make a list of pros and cons, or I might just try and state what the problem is, and I go back and edit that statement 50 times till I get it. Yeah. No, it's not exactly that. The problem is, and that's how I figure out. That's how I do my thinking, is on paper. My mother also solved her problems taking pen to paper. It might be a grocery list, but she'd use the food symbolically powerful enough to get us through the challenges of the problems, or help us refine the joy, or celebrate. Food was her way of showing love. She made a grocery list, and that was her plan of action. My mother had very little formal education, but she could make lists, and food was the way that she figured she could make us good and strong and ready enough to go do whatever we needed to do. And my grandmother, who had even less schooling, had half the schooling. My mother only made it to the beginning of 7th grade. My grandmother didn't make it through 4th grade. She embodied her plan of action in stories and dreams that she would share with us. She would dream things out at night, and then she would tell us the dream in the morning. And it was her way of taking action by using those words and stories to give power and to create a possible concept or solution of magical survival. We made it through if we do this or if we do that. So taking pen to paper for me is kind of ingrained. It's the way I solve things. And they say every character a writer writes has a little bit of them in it. The good guys, the bad guys, everybody reflects us a little bit. So it was a natural for that to happen, I think. Even in the year that I was fighting cancer, I was going through every healing method I could, from alternative curanderismo to Reiki to chemo to surgery to radiation. But I never stopped writing, and I never stopped doing readings. And I happened to have been inaugurated as the first city poet laureate of San Antonio a month before I was diagnosed with cancer. So I did like 300 speeches and programs and workshops, writing workshops in those 2 years, simultaneous with the other stuff that was going on. So I guess my modus operandi is write about it. Write about it. Writing is a very powerful tool. Dictators and very oppressive and repressive governments always go after the writers, the news reporters, the poets. They're the ones that are in trouble. They're the ones that are taken to jail, yes, or killed or silenced. And this is a story about refusing to be silenced.
Yeah.
So of course she wrote. Writing can reach a much broader audience than just one person can, and books can travel, and stories go on forever, because stories are passed mouth to mouth, and they're marked in our minds, they're marked on our hearts. They change the way we view the world and the way we teach others to view the world. So yeah, I didn't know she was going to turn out a writer, but that's what she did.
And it shows other readers what their writing could be for them too. I think, we talk about writing in so many different ways, and you might not you don't need to be a formal writer as in an author, but I mean, we are all authors regardless, right? Not so much in the formal sense of making a book, but we write because maybe we want to record a memory, or we want to record our feelings and process things. And so it's just a great outlet for processing anything a person's going through. So
there's a really cute poem, I guess about a third of the way through the book, where she realizes she does it just out of, I don't know, without thinking. At the end of her homework assignment, she's so upset about how long the homework assignment is that she begins to write the teacher a note, and it turns into a poem, and she puts the entire poem at the end of the homework assignment, complaining to him about how many hours this took.
Did the
and
math.
How didn't you read the chapter that you assigned us to read? It's not only, 3 hours to read, but it's about the Industrial Revolution, and children were being forced to work too many hours, and I'm being forced to work too many hours, and that's against the law. So there. So
she literally learned and shared.
She realizes that writing can actually change things.
Yeah.
The teacher changed his approach to that, and later on to other things. So she gets in the habit of writing Mr. Mason at the end of the homework assignment, saying, and another thing.
I thought it was genius. I think kids might pick up some tips too from that.
For self-defense.
There you
go. Sometimes we articulate what we're feeling in a way that can make a difference. Sometimes people are not going to listen. But when people listen, it makes a huge difference.
Wow. And as a teacher, and when kids are giving turning in an assignment, they definitely have a captive audience in the teacher to be able to share. So we are living in a time where I know I'm seeing many young people actively engage in political causes and movements, and I'll tell you, it inspires me. I always say, kids are going to be the ones that save us right now, and so I sit back in awe as I watch these kids get engaged in the different social causes, from the environment to even like with book banning right now. And I like I said, I sit back in awe because I was such a shy kid. I mean, you had to rip me off my mom's leg when I was little to go to school. I was just a very shy person. But I also believe too that people come into your lives to shape you, and grow you and nurture you, because I mean, here I am, I speak often with the media, about intellectual freedom, that sort of thing too. So yes, even a shy kid can, get to this place. So what advice would you give to students who would want to get engaged but don't know where to start in their activism?
I would say, look at the things in your life that you feel could be better, or the things that bother you. What are the things that are bothering you? And then ask yourself why. And if it's, I get so much asthma, I wish we didn't have days that we can't go outside and play for recess. Ask, why are there days that you can't go outside and play for recess? Well, because the pollution level in the air is high. So what can we do as everyday people to change there being that much pollution in the air? We're in a time period which is really a time period of crisis, and folks get upset when we say that, but I don't know any other way to define there being half the meat and harvest produced this year as what was produced last year.
Yeah.
And last year being half what it was the year before. If you look at what that means that we're in a time period of crisis. Maybe not the second. Maybe we won't feel it 5 minutes from now or 10 minutes from now. But we're in a situation where we need a lot of help. And if we don't do something about it, nobody will. It has to start grassroots, and it has to be massive, and we can make a difference. People have made a difference many times. We also know that if you do nothing, you're actually helping
Yeah.
That whatever that problem is
Right.
grow bigger.
Inaction is
Doing
action.
and saying nothing. The lack of action is an action. The
Yep.
lack of voting is a vote. The lack of speaking up for justice is in itself an injustice. So I think that helps our children. They have a sense of right and wrong from the time they're very little. They're like, that's not fair. How come he got a cookie and I didn't get a cookie? They have that understanding. And we have to respect them and give them the chance to ask those questions and try to find answers for it. And I love the teachers in the book. She runs into, not all of the teachers, but 5 of her 6 teachers are absolutely amazing, and they're so much better than anything she's encountered before in her educational experience. So she's just blown away. And she praises them. But the teachers, one of the things they do is listen to her. They don't say, I know the answer. They say, maybe we can find an answer. Maybe we can do something about it. I don't know what it is, but let's try. They respect her opinion.
Right.
And I think that's vital.
Right.
And
Well, and it's grounded in a relationship to build together, to get to know them, and leverage that interest and nurture it into, maybe, like you said, an action to do something better or to make things better. So I love how Warrior Girl is bookended with the very strong statements on the opening and last page, opening page and the last page. There's a really compelling start, which really just, like, I was hooked. I was like, oh, I mean, it's the first page, and I read a lot of books, but I mean, right away I was like, and I didn't want to stop, which sometimes you have to stop, but I'm like, I think I'm just going to not do anything else. I'm just going to finish this book, right? So it was a powerful start. So what it does is, it, besides hooking me as a reader, it closes with an end that kind of inspires the reader and reminds them about the power within themselves to fulfill their own dreams. Is that something that you intentionally planned? Because I thought it was beautiful. I went back. I read your book twice, and then I listened to the audio. Which, if you've not, listen to the audio too. It's great. I think it just made it an even richer experience too after I'd read it. I just love how it bookended the story, the entire story. So,
thank you. Well, yes, I am very intentional with how I start and how I end. I do that with all the poetry collections. And this is, while it's a novel in verse. So it's a book of poetry too. It's bilingual. It can speak prose and poetry at the same time. So when I write, I really try to start with the crux of the problem. And even if it's embedded in a metaphor. And when I end, I feel there has to be some tiny progress, something that moved forward because of the adventure that we've co-experienced with the author just by reading the book. So if a book doesn't take you anywhere, you don't feel affirmed or challenged or enlightened or wiser or more sensitive or more alive, or you're just not moved at all, the book is empty for you. Really try to start with the problem and move towards the resolution of that problem in the end, even if it's just a little bit of progress. Maybe what I can do is read that first poem and the last poem, and maybe I'll read just the one poem from the middle that kind of summarizes her approach to everything.
Please do. I'm ready. I got my book.
It's one poem for the beginning, one for the end, and one for the middle, and there really are more than 3 poems in the book. It's a good one.
So wonderful.
This is the first poem. It's called Life Slapped Her Hard Hand. Felt like life had slapped her hard hand over my mouth and tried to shut me up, tried to keep me from being me, keep me from even my song, even my name. Yes, she tried to shut me up, and for a little while, she did. And then, not too much further along, you kind of see the philosophy, the strategy, the strength that her grandma has taught her, and which actually gets her through the stuff in the book. It's called My Grandma Tere Taught Me, because she's named after Tere, after her grandma. One of the things my grandma Tere taught me was how to make a fiesta out of every day. Every day she would whisper, "Today is a celebration. It's the feast of San Fulano de Tal." And she would tell me the name of the saint for that day, or the celebration for that day, or the reason we should be happy that day. El día del mariachi. So we'd listen to mariachi music. El día del chef. We'd cook something special and exotic. El día de la risa. We'd spend the day joking and laughing. Now I know why Tere is just as strong a warrior name as Guerrera. Because when you're celebrating, when you find a reason to be happy, a reason to sing or dance or paint or play or laugh or write, they haven't taken everything away from you. And then in the ending, she's a much older person, not just the 9 to 10 months that have passed since the beginning of the book. And this is her summary statement. They don't have the power. Sometimes they try to take everything away from you. Sometimes they actually do. But then you look inside and find something there they can't even see and they can't even understand. And so they don't have the power to see it, touch it, or take it away. They don't have the power, but you do. You are all that has happened to you and all that you dream to be and all the possibilities, whether reached or not. And all of your story and all of your name and all you have loved and all you choose to celebrate. All of you as warriors for the good. Guerrera, guerrero, this knowledge, this courage, this all inside you will be your shield, will be your power.
Yay. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Again, if you have not purchased this book, you need to get it. Pass it, read it yourself as an educator, but pass it to a reader you know will enjoy this. I think I'm one of these people. I don't believe that there's a boy book or a girl book. I believe books are for all, and this character will teach readers so much. So just highly encourage everybody to get this book. Listen to the audio. It's beautiful, and it's just been so beautiful to talk to you. I think we're supposed to have some questions, but am I a little early? I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. There are some questions from the audience. If there was a warrior girl inspired reading list, what other books would you add to it? Oh my gosh. Wow.
Okay. Becky, you can have a turn at this too.
Okay.
But I think that what I would do for, first of all, there's a book referenced in there, which right now is the only book written about Emma Tenayuka. We're in the process of writing the entire adult biography, but the children's book about Emma Tenayuka, which is co-authored by myself and her niece, Cheryl Tenayuka, it's called That's Not Fair. Emma Tenayuka's Struggle for Justice, and it's available in Spanish too. The same book is bilingual, English and Spanish. I would recommend very highly, happen to have it right here next to me, Shalina Gonzalez and Adriana Garcia's All Around
that
Us,
book. It's beautiful.
which gives us a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness, some of what Tere's grandma was talking about. You're not alone in the world. You're connected to all the warriors that have come before and all the guerreras and dreamers that will come after. You are not alone, and you have a lot of strength to draw on. That's a spiritual strength. It's a power. It's something we can't always see or touch, and that's why it's safe inside you and other people can't get to it.
Yes. Let me recommend one, and then
Okay.
I was going to recommend a middle grade graphic novel, Frizzy by Claribel Ortega. Have you read that book?
No, it sounds wonderful though.
It's about a girl who's, dealing with her hair, and she gets a lot of, flack about her hair because, she's got naturally curly hair. And so her family even wants it to be like straight. And so it's kind of, dealing with your hair, but then just also accepting you for who you are. And of course, it's a graphic novel, and so many kids just gravitate to graphic novels too, but I really enjoyed that book.
Great. Under the Mesquite by Guadalupe Garcia McCall is 10 and up. It's a lot of high schoolers read it, and a lot of middle school and middle grade also. But it's about a young woman who goes through some very tough stuff and makes it through anyway. And her follow-up book to that was Summer of the Mariposas, which is also about being strong and depending on your own resources. And that one's a little more of an odyssey told in a Chicana setting, Chicana living on the border setting. So those are two that come to mind as showing the strength in young women and the strength which we have inside ourselves to make it through some very tough things in life. Another one that I think of, and again, I'm going to a picture book on this one because it's just so powerful. This one's a classic, and I think it tries to deconstruct the traditional narrative that we're always getting about what's beautiful. And in the book, Selena Teresa deals with colorism and wonders, why certain things have happened to her, why people judged her just by taking a look at her. And then she realizes that her little 5-year-old cousin rather is not a cinnamon color like her dad calls her, but is actually a much darker color. And she wonders, what is she going to go through? So I'm going to have to be strong to protect her. But this is, I think we start early with kids and giving them the right messages. This is one of my favorites, Niña Bonita, by Ana Maria Machado. And it's a beautiful story about a little white bunny that sees the most beautiful little girl he's ever seen in his life. And she has the most amazing hair, and she has this beautiful black skin, and he keeps trying to see what he can do to transform himself to be like her, and realizes in the end that you celebrate the other people each for what they look like, and the other bunnies for what they look like. So it's a beautiful
Love that. I'm going to close with I don't know if anybody's familiar with the picture books, the Lupe Lopez Rockstar series by E.E. Charlton Trujillo. So Lupe is a kindergartner, and she is a kindergartner with confidence. And there's actually 2 books. One's about being a rock star, another one's about being a reader. But she goes to school at the Hector B. Garcia Elementary, and so she is a leader in her class, but she kind of comes up with some challenges too. But you just see her kind of rise through that, but yet learn and be a leader in her classroom. So if you've not read that series, and they come in both English and Spanish, which is amazing. I love when that happens. But and it's a great school story too. So I know people are always looking for some great school stories, but just a strong little character in Lupe. So
I do want to mention, I'm very excited that Warrior Girl, which is in English with some Spanish sprinkled in, is going to come out, is going to be available in January in its Spanish version, and it's going to be called Guerrera.
Yay! That's wonderful. I love it. Yay. I'll have to have a whole other celebration just for that. So, what was your favorite book when you were 12? Oh, my.
Okay, I have to confess, we didn't have a lot of books at home.
Oh.
I grew up in a house that had 3 books when I was 6, 7, 8. I think I was 8 before we got a 4th book. Mm-hmm. And those 3 books were adult books. One was the Bible, and one was a hymnal, and one was something I thought was about medicine or doctors, because it was called La Santa Doctrina. And I thought Doctrina, doctor, medicine, something like that. Anyway, I didn't have a lot of children's books. And I didn't even know Dr. Seuss existed. If you can believe it, Dr. Seuss existed, but not in my neighborhood. We didn't have a library in my elementary school. We got a library in my middle school. But before that, in 6th grade, the Scholastic Book Club. And we were able to buy books for 35 cents and 45 cents and 50 cents. And so I had a few books from that. So I didn't have a lot of books. So this is going to sound really weird. But The Incredible Journey, which was about 2 dogs and a cat.
I love that book. That's the movie too.
Yeah. And I also liked, these were the only books I had. So I loved them. I read them over and over again. Great Expectations. The Invisible Man. I started to get into science fiction late in the 12-year-old year and going into 13. So my favorite books were the books that I had. And so I have a respect for all books. And I still have that copy of The Incredible Journey. And I don't know if Great Expectations made it. I think it got moldy at some point, but whatever it was. I
have a question. What was the first book you read where you saw yourself within the pages? Because I know we grew up in times where there weren't people of color. I mean, no, Hispanic kid, nothing. So I know for me, it was Too Many Tamales.
Oh, you're very young.
I know. Well, yeah, but here's the thing: I was already in my 30s though by then, and so that's so crazy to me when you think about that. And I tell people that story, but I mean, it was just the reality.
I was so hungry for seeing some proof of my existence in the literary pages that in high school I took all the Spanish and French I could take. And you say, why French? Because I was hungry, and there was nothing about Mexico. There was nothing about Mexican Americans. There was nothing about Mexico and Spain and France, because it was close to Spain. I'd take whatever I could get from either one of those. And I read La Serie de Tormes, and I read Don Quixote, and then I got into college. And by college, we were beginning to have a few Chicano literature books and poems like I Am Joaquin, or poems by Alurista and Tomas Rivera and Rudy Anaya. Those were the first time that I saw my culture represented in literature. And I was in my teens and 20s. I was 19 or 20 when I started to see a little bitty bit of Chicano literature. And then it all exploded. By the time I was 21, 22, I was thick into the Chicano literary movement. And so,
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I think publishing is making strides, but still a
yeah.
ways to go, because when you think
Mhm.
about a library having easily 10,000 copies, at an elementary, it's bigger or greater, at maybe at a middle school or high school,
Yeah.
that the likelihood of there being enough representation within the shelves of that library, it's going to be, probably greater on the wide end, and so how do we, what we, I think as professionals, librarians, and I'm speaking for librarians, and even as
When you,
teachers, educators, we need to be
yeah.
intentional about making sure there's representation for all colors, all kinds of families, all the things, because um, it is a powerful moment when you can connect with a character in a book, or the food that they're eating, or the places they visit, just in the interactions they have as a family, even. So,
When you think about it, I think part of the reason I went for science fiction, I mean, I was identifying more with things from a different planet than I was with the books that I was reading. But it also gave the possibility of there being a different world. It wasn't monocultural and monolingual. And so I fell in love with science fiction before I fell in love with Chicano lit, because I never saw any Chicano lit.
mhm,
Um, and I read everything I could in Spanish or French.
mhm,
Um, but science fiction, really, I had to go to science fiction and what they call speculative science fiction, which I
mhm,
used to call social science fiction. It was like
mhm.
different societies, to begin to understand
Yeah,
what we had gone through. In fact, it was the um, novels like 1984 and Brave New
mhm,
World, the dystopias that
yeah,
appealed to me, because I was living in a dystopia. I was
mhm,
living
yeah,
in a place where um, instead of being valued, a bilingual was taught to get rid of one of the languages. Instead of
right,
being
right. So you
valued
kind of
for having
squashed.
two cultures and two experiences, I was being told to forget the
Yeah,
experiences that I brought from home.
yeah. And I think I just kind of wonder. I think about my personal experience growing up. My mother was born in Bolivia, came here as a 16-year-old legally. My dad was born in Mexico, but his mother was an American citizen. His dad was a Mexican citizen. But even then, like, their education was up to middle school. I think, because they wanted to integrate, be accepted, like, it was like, don't do this, don't do that. And of course, you're talking, I'm very fair. My mom is very fair, fairer than I am. And so it was easy to do that. But in that same, I guess, in their attempts to try to integrate and, you know, be accepted, you almost, like, they went over, in terms of like overkill and squashing, who we are. And it's not to say that they didn't do anything. I mean, we still had our tradition, but it's almost like, like, well, because we want to do this, we're going to stop doing that. Um, but I love now that we've been able to go back as a family and talk about these things, and also recognize that there were still some traditions in there. So, we still had tamaladas, and, you know, we made buñuelos, and we came together at the holidays and with family. And then I think about now, even with me, like, in this story, Selena's in a family where the grandmother lives, and, so there's a multi-generational home. Well, I actually had my grandkids living with me with my daughter. And so it's a beautiful thing that you can recognize those things. Um, and so they're not gone, but I think when you read something, it helps to bring it up and remind you of what a powerful experience and importance it can have in your life, to just have that cultural piece of your family with you. So do we have any more questions? Oh, what do you wish for the future of books for Latinx readers? Oh, a
Well,
deep questions.
it is. These are wonderful questions.
Yes.
The future of books. I, I worry. I've been asked a lot by people, are books dying out? And I said, no.
Mhm.
Books give the reader more control than movies do. I love movies and I love books.
I do too.
But anybody I know who's read a book and seen a movie prefers the book.
Yep.
Because a book doesn't tell you what that person really looks like or what's really going on. It lets you fill in the gaps. It tells you certain things, but it can't possibly tell you every single detail or the book would never end.
Yeah.
So you're filling in the things that have meaning for you, and you're seeing it within your context. So it has an extra dimension. Movies can add music and they can add action, but it's not going to penetrate as deeply as books do. And what is the challenge now in a world where we're used to having everything digital?
Our phone.
Yeah,
So plugged in.
I hope that we continue to have the human being, the reader, be part of the production. And I mean that because in a book, the human being has to insert their own conclusions in it. So I'm not worried about Kindles and people being able to read audiobooks. I'm worried about people not reading
At all.
and losing that. So my wish would be that whatever it takes, whatever new form of media it takes that allows the reader to be able to insert their own extras, to provide more from their own senses,
Right.
and not be provided all the senses, the more powerful and personal that book will be. So I hope books get more and more powerful and give more power to the reader. I think, we've had some attempts in that direction, like, choose your own ending kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even that, it's not really choosing because they're all canned and they all end up,
Right.
in something that the author pre-designated.
Right.
So there's got to be another way. And I think we can stay open to creating new forms of interaction with books. But I don't want us to take away the reader's huge role
Yeah.
creating a book. When you read a book and I read a book, we're reading two different books.
Right. Well, and we're the takeaways are going to be different for each of us because we're again bringing our experiences into this, and we all have different takeaways. We glean different things. I also think too, it's so important for us as educators to remember how powerful an opportunity we have in modeling that. And when I say that as educators, yes, I'm saying teachers and librarians, but I also think the first primary educators are the parents and the powerful opportunities they have to model reading, to encourage reading, because those are powerful opportunities. And if we want, there's been a lot of research studies about reading, and if there's reading that's being modeled in the home, the kids are likely going to be readers.
That's right.
The more books the kids have in the home, the more likely they're going to be better readers. So there's just a lot that goes along with that. But if we want, I agree about the whole movie thing. The experience that you have in reading is just so rich because you form the images in your imagination. And to me, that's what a great book does, is that then you go watch the movie and you're like, no, that's not how it was in my head. In my head, it was this, So, I don't think reading will ever go away. I just think, like you said, the way it's received might be different, but so many people still love a good paper book.
Oh, yes.
I'm an audiobook listener, reader, but I also do digital sometimes. It's beautiful. And then you get to go to an event like yours where you get the book, but then you've got the author up there, dramatizing this amazing work. So then there's that. So, what a great thing too. So definitely lots of different vehicles for a story to be shared. So I don't think we have any more questions, but before we go, I do want to just thank everybody for spending some time with us tonight. I hope you've had an amazing time, Carmen. I know I've just enjoyed chatting with you about your book, and just want to remind everybody again that Warrior Girl, this beautiful book, is available for purchase, so you want to be sure to get that. And don't forget to sign up for the YouTube subscription so that you can, see all the great authors that are going to be sharing in this whole month of Hispanic Heritage Month. So,
September.
Yeah.
September.
There's so many things going on, right? Anyway, but take advantage and listen to all these great events. I know that there's some going to be streaming even during the school day, so kids will be able to listen to some authors. But it's been a joy to just chat with you, Carmen, and I just want to thank Penguin again for sponsoring this and for this time together. I hope everybody has a great evening.
And if you hang around for a few minutes after us, you're going to see a little Penguin preview. So
that's right. I forgot about that. Thanks for reminding me.
It's been so wonderful being able to talk with you, Becky. You're an amazing person. And I think that, the path that you are laying down for our young people is something that they desperately need. You're giving them the freedom to be the activists that they choose to be, and to create the world that they want to see.
Thank you
for the work you do.
I'm honored, and thank you. Keep writing. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Judith Huerta from Penguin Young Readers, and today I'm here with my colleague.
Hi, I'm Gaby Faez.
And we're going to be sharing some of our favorite books by Latinx, Latina, Hispanic creators. We have lots of exciting titles to share with you, some that are available now and some publishing next spring. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started.
All right, this cover never ceases to amaze me. Globally renowned shark scientist Melissa Cristina Marquez teamed up with the award-winning illustrator Devin L. Kurtz to create this irresistible picture book. It blends the autobiographical with the fantastical. As the sun sets over La Playita del Condado in Puerto Rico, Melly meets Jaiba the crab. Jaiba takes her on an underwater adventure that reveals her destiny to become the mother of sharks. As a Puerto Riqueña with a big sister who goes by Melly, this book really tugs at my heartstrings. But I have a feeling that even without that personal connection, it'll do the same for you. And next, the She Persisted chapter book series is all about women who spoke up and rose up against all odds, making Pura Verpre a great fit. Best-selling and award-winning author Meg Medina introduces readers to the pioneering Puerto Rican librarian and storyteller.
In José and el Perro, the young boy is excited to pick El Perro Perfecto from a shelter. He loves the dog, but after trying out basic commands like siéntate, he realizes his new pet has only learned commands in English. Join José as he trains su perro in this bilingual early reader, which will be available as a paperback bridge book, as well as a paper overboard picture book. Basic Spanish to English translations at the back of the book makes it an excellent teaching tool, an important aspect of this charming series written by Suzanne Rose and Silvia Lopez. With 3 starter reviews already, this next novel is definitely one to watch. It's a sparkling middle grade debut that shares the themes and hearts of favorites like Dumpin' and Starfish. Barely Floating is a charming, funny story about one 12-year-old who channels her rage into synchronized swimming dreams by acclaimed author Lilian Rivera. Nat Santiago knows she can outswim any kid at her local pool, and if they underestimate her because of her age, 12, or size, fat, that's their problem. At its heart, this book is an unapologetically positive interpretation of one confident, self-accepting tween's desire to pursue her dreams, follow her heart, and break the mold. It has sports, friendship, explorations of class disparity, and many moments that will make you smile.
Inspired by his own childhood and packed with clever illustrations, world-famous entertainer George Lopez's sequel to Chupa Carter sees Jorge finally feeling at home in his new town, thanks to his awesome friends Liza and Ernie, and especially Carter, the chupacabra. But rumor has it that a petrifying party decoration floats around, setting eerie fires to avenge a long ago betrayal. Can Jorge and his friends catch the culprit? And this one is already a fan favorite. There is a power, sadness, and beauty to Jasmine Mendez's writing. And of course, the Penguin Classroom, Penguin Young Reader teams are suckers for novels in verse. This book deals with chronic illness, drowning, and the death of a child, which happens before the novel begins. Aniana is a 12-year-old Dominican-American girl from Galveston, Texas, who feels most alive when she's in the water or competing on her swim team. Unfortunately, Aniana's mother has a deep-rooted fear of water due to a terrible accident she witnessed when she was young. So Mami has always insisted that Aniana stay away from the water. What follows is the journey of a girl who must grieve who she once was in order to rise like the tide and become the young woman she was meant to be. This book is about the secrets we keep from ourselves and our family. It's about mothers and daughters and the limitations of religion, and ultimately how we find the power to speak about things that have been hidden inside for far too long. You're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. All right, now on to the graphic memoir Mexikid by Pedro Martin. Pedro has grown up hearing stories about his legendary crime-fighting grandfather, who was once part of the Mexican Revolution. But that doesn't mean Pedro is excited at the news that Abuelito is coming to live with their family. After all, Pedro has 8 brothers and sisters, and the house is crowded enough. Still, Pedro piles into the Winnebago with his family for a road trip to Mexico to bring Abuelito home, and what follows is the trip of a lifetime, one filled with laughs and heartache. Next up, we have Warrior Girl by Carmen Tarfolla. Dr. Tarfolla was named State Poet Laureate of Texas in 2015, and she's an award-winning poet and author, storyteller, performance artist, motivational speaker, scholar, and university professor. Warrior Girl is a beautiful novel in verse about the life and celebrations of a courageous 12-year-old Chicano girl, and it's based on one of the many experiences Carmen herself had. Our girl starts school with high hopes, but from the beginning is told she says her name wrong, and she spells her name wrong, that there's just so much wrong to her. Fortunately, she has an amazing family who fill her with confidence that school tries to suck out of her. And we watch Teresa Celina grow into a girl who is not going to let anyone steal her joy. She is a bold warrior of her name, her history, and her right to choose what to do and who she celebrates in life.
Suddenly a Murder is a contemporary mystery about 7 friends at a 1920s themed party, where it's all pretend until one of them is murdered. Suddenly a Murder is One of Us is Lying with faux Great Gatsby flair and the locked room mystery feel of movies like Knives Out. This story follows Isadora Morales, or Izzy, who just graduated from high school. To celebrate, Izzy's ride or die, Cassidy, invites her and 5 of their very rich friends to stay at a luxurious manor on a small island off the coast of Maine. The plan is to live and party like they're in the roaring 20s and socialites, costumes and all, no cell phones, for an entire week. And that they do, until Cassidy's boyfriend turns up dead. Murdered, to be precise. Investigators arrive at the scene thereafter, and until they find the killer, they forbid the friends from leaving the estate, and they are all stuck in what is now seems a creepy manor with the killer, and they only have their roaring 20s clothes. And in this powerful debut novel, Mexican-American author Haley Alcaraz chronicles a riveting portrait of transformation, resilience, and love with an unlikely heroine who, when faced with unforeseen disaster, surprises everyone, especially herself. This YA follows Ruby, who, up until the California wildfires, only had to worry about getting the boy next door to realize that they would be perfect together. Now, Ruby must find the compassion to help her family and those less fortunate to rise from the ashes.
And finally, here's a preview for some of our spring picture books coming in 2024, celebrating abuelitas, papas, community, and body positivity. These are all books that you won't want to miss and need to have on your classroom shelf. And finally, if you're looking for more books by Latinx, Latina, and Hispanic creators, please check out our book list that you can find at the link listed on the screen. We have a wide variety of titles, including frontlist and backlist, that span across all ages. And that is it from us today. Here's some info where you can find us, and make sure you check out penguinclassroom.com. We're updating the site constantly with materials for you to use, sneak peeks, videos, and more. Have a great day and enjoy the festival. Bye.
Goodbye.